Hello and welcome to Casting Nets, a podcast of Immanuel Lutheran Church in Shirley, St. John's, and Maribel. This is, we're doing two birds with one stone. We're doing something for Immanuel Lutheran Church in Shirley. We are also doing something for the Casting Nets podcast. This last Sunday at Immanuel Lutheran, we had Pastor Jeff Samelson come to us. Welcome, Jeff.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And supposedly, I'm going to try, there we go. Now we're on a split screen.
No, what looks worse now?
So we are also broadcasting live on different platforms. So if you have any chats or questions for Pastor Samelson about Christian life issues, about what does Christian Life Resources do, please ask the way in the bottom of your screen. There is the website that he is. You can find some resources. You can contact him as well, and to find his podcast as well. Just to start us off, Jeff, you can call me Dave. That's okay. Okay. Tell us about yourself and where you have served.
All right. Well, I am Jeff Samelson. I am the Director of Ministry Advancement for Christian Life Resources. I've been in that position for almost 2 years now. Started in April of 21. Prior to that, I served almost 21 years at Christ Lutheran Church in Clarksville, Maryland, as a pastor there. And that was my first assignment out of seminary. I graduated from the seminary in 2000. I am a second career pastor. My first career was with the U.S. Foreign Service. I did 5 years with the Department of State and 2 years at the U.S. Embassy in Singapore and 2 years at the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, Colombia. And I'm originally from Libertyville, Illinois, which is far north suburbs of Chicago, and got my first degree in political science from Washington University in St. Louis. And when I did the seminary certification program, I was one of the lucky ones who got to spend 1 year at Northwestern College, then 1 year at Martin Luther College before going to seminary for the typical 4-year program.
Sure, and it mentions in your bio that your dad was also influential in Christian Life Resources. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the original. Well, I'll go back a little bit further than that, just to give some context. Most people probably are aware that in 1973 the Supreme Court ruled in the Roe v. Wade case, and that legalized abortion throughout the United States, and effectively, really, particularly with its companion case, Stover v. Bolton, through all 9 months of pregnancy. What a lot of people today don't realize is that at the time, it's caught most, conservative Christians in the United States off guard. To the extent that any church was paying attention to abortion, it was generally speaking just the Roman Catholic Church, and therefore a lot of Protestants, weren't paying a whole lot of attention. And so it took a while for people in various churches to start saying, "Hey, wait a second, this is a really bad thing. We've got all these children being killed, and we're not doing anything about it, and it doesn't look like it's going away. We need to act." And so it took a while, took a few years. And toward the end of the 70s, some people at, as it turns out, my home congregation decided, well, we're going to do something. And they found a model that would really work for getting that started. It was a pregnancy counseling center, as they called it at the time. And my dad was one of the people at my home congregation who worked with that. He wasn't the prime mover. That was a man named Larry Markwart. But they all worked together. And I know my mom was behind the scenes with things as well. And in 1980, we opened the first of these pregnancy counseling centers. The model worked well. And it wasn't long after that there were people throughout the synod saying, "Hey, we want to do something too. Let's do that." And it was then that it took only 3 years before the various centers throughout the synod said, "Hey, why don't we join together?" And they took the name Wells Lutherans for Life when they did that. And then in 1999, the organization changed its name from Wells Lutherans for Life to Christian Life Resources, which is what it is now.
Thank you. It was always neat to see the history of where somebody comes from, why do they do what they do. We're very thankful that you came and preached for us last Sunday, talking about knowing where you stand from Mark. I thought it was unique, or it helped us to understand the life issue from a different perspective, where Jesus is for life and protecting this man, and it's about and it always comes from God's position of grace, how God is a giver. He wants to give life, and to know he posits those questions: what is good, what is evil, and where do you stand on this? He's encouraging that. So I did appreciate hearing your sermon today. So we're going to talk more about Christian Life Resources and your role there. But before we do that, a short disclaimer that we usually do for Casting Nets is that this is just an opinion of two pastors who are talking. We're very passionate about this subject of life, but not everything we say is the position of our church bodies. We hold ourselves to the Lutheran confessions, but you are engaging in a conversation between two pastors as we talk about life and real life and living faith, and especially the issue of abortion. We encourage you to reach out to us, and this is the beginning of a conversation. We hope that you will continue this conversation. You can email me at castingnetspod@gmail.com. You can go to Christian Life Resources and contact Pastor Samelson as well. And please, if you like what you hear, feel free to share. Give us 4 stars. Don't give us 5 stars. Otherwise, my head will get too big and it'll explode. So give me 4 stars, and that would be much appreciated, so that the algorithms that point content to individuals could point this content to them as well.
Is it possible for them to rate and do differently than you?
Well, we can't have a podcast without a couple of dad jokes, so we didn't have any dad jokes to begin. I have a bad joke, a bad joke. There's a little slip there. I have a dad joke about a broken clock, but it's not the right time. Or maybe I should do the crickets just based on your reaction. Please tell us more about your role as the Director of Mission Advancement at Christian Life Resources.
Yeah, there's really not an easy definition for my position. It's one of those things that they needed a name for my position, and Director of Ministry Advancement was what they put on it. A lot of people hear it and they think, oh, well, you must be the funding guy, the one who goes out looking for donations. And that's not actually at all what I do. We have somebody else on staff at CLR, Brittany Jans, who's in charge of that aspect of things. Most of what I do really is just trying to get out and around to the various congregations, schools, organizations, and such of the WELS and the ELS, and talk about life issues and talk about Christian Life Resources. Most of what I do, or perhaps the most visible thing that I do, is what I was doing at your congregation this past Sunday, which is going to congregations. I'll preach for the service and usually do a Bible class or some kind of presentation there. Sometimes do more than that. Sometimes the congregation will have me in do a 2 or 3 hour presentation on a topic or something like that. But that's the most visible part of what I do. I'm trying to advance the ministry by getting out and around. But back, when I'm back home, back in the office, there's some writing there. I also am kind of the point man at this point for dealing with our various affiliates, the pregnancy centers. We still have a network of those. And I'm one of the 3 people who works on our podcast, which is called Life Challenges.
So, Life Challenges, what is the format for that podcast? How do you guys work that out? What are some of the things you talk about?
Yeah, we have there are three of us, as I said. There's me. There's Pastor Bob Fleischman, who is the national director of Christian Life Resources, and we have a volunteer, Mrs. Krista Potratz, who is kind of our moderator and co-host and producer, and the one who makes sure everything actually happens. And we joke that she's the one who tries to keep us in line because we're pastors and we like to talk. But which anyone listening right now is probably saying, "Oh yeah, oh, yeah."
Yeah.
But
It is a blessing and a curse to hear pastors
yes.
talk.
So yeah, we aim for 30, maybe 40 minutes a week. Episodes come out on Tuesdays, and we when we were originally playing around with the concept, we had the ideas of, well, each week we're gonna do a book review. Each week we're gonna do some items from the news, and eventually we realized that it really just made sense to have a conversation about whatever the topic was of the week. And we wanted to be sure from the beginning that we talked about all sorts of life and family issues, and not just keep hitting the same notes on abortion or whatever it is. And so we've really hit a wide range. We are up to 76 episodes now, although it may be a little more than that because I think there were some bonus episodes in there.
What was your go ahead? What was your favorite episode that you've done so far, or one that you thought was surprising that it had a lot of downloads?
Yeah, it would be hard for me to point to a favorite. I'd say my least favorite was one or two that we recorded at the end of December because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was coming down with a bug, and I really couldn't participate. It was kind of awkward. But the most popular or most downloaded episode that we had was a really moving episode that we had. We had a guest on that one, and that was Pastor Kurt Ebert, who's at Christ Alone in Mequon, Wisconsin. And he told this, the subject was grief, but he was telling that from his own personal perspective as a father who lost a son to suicide. And that was continues to be one of our more downloaded episodes, and it was powerful.
Yeah, it is a very very real topic, especially with our veterans coming home and with struggling with readjusting to life, and also with our isolation that we've experienced in the last couple of years, where individuals don't have some of their outlets, and so now they're even more isolated. Yeah, it was a very timely topic. I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and we had last summer for June is what they call LGBTQ Pride Month. We decided that we would dedicate our episodes that month to the various issues that surround that. And so we did. I forget whether it was 4 or 5 issues on something in the range, and one of those episodes is in our top 5 of downloaded episodes so far. But we've it's the kind of thing that we get lots of questions about, and people are interested in that, and so we did that. We also did a long series of podcasts on church and state and Christian and citizen issues, which I don't know. I think 1 or 2 people might have thought we went too far on that, or too long on that, but it is, again, that's one of the topics that people are always coming back to. What about this? Is this okay? Is that going too far, and things like that.
Sure. So our listeners can find that it's called Life Challenges Podcast. It's under the resources. If you go to the webpage, Christian Life Resources, and go under resources, it's under Life Challenges Podcast. Is that right? Is there another key word that you might suggest they could use when they're in their podcasting format? Yeah.
Yeah. I think we had to call it the Life Challenges Podcast because of other names that were out there or something like that. But I would hope that by now anyone who searches for Life Challenges as a podcast is going to get us first, because we've gone over 10,000 episodes, or sorry, downloads as of the end of 2022. So we're definitely past the other one that had a similar name that I think only had about 12.
There you go. As you're looking ahead to 2023 and the work that the Christian Life Resources is doing, what do you feel is their number one issue that they're tackling this year?
It's hard to say. A year ago, I might not have thought this. I think right now that abortion-related issues are going to be a lot of it because it's very much in the news, and it's very much in people's faces. Certainly here in the state of Wisconsin, with some recent elections and things like that, campaign ads have been talking about pro-life, pro-abortion, very much, and that's going to continue for a while. And other states have similar things happening, maybe on different schedules, but that is a big one. I will say also that something that we get a lot of questions about is transgender issues and things like that. That people are struggling a little bit. And the church has pretty much been flailing on this because it really took people by surprise when that came up. It happened so quickly that it went from just being, okay, well, there's this gay marriage thing now that, okay. And then it was just like, boom, in people's faces that this whole other issue was there. And a lot of people are just like, I don't understand what just happened. And now it's in my school, it's in my community. In some cases, it's in my family. And so that's the kind of thing that lots of people are talking about, and so that's what we're talking about. We want to be helpful with that, with advice where we can give it, information where we can provide it, and just some kind of guidance to. And sometimes the most that we can offer, or what's really most helpful, is just the comfort and the confidence of knowing, okay, this position that I have, it is the scriptural one. This is the way a Christian is supposed to, support this or approach this, and I'm not alone.
Yeah, I remember when I was serving out in eastern Montana, you would think, it's more, I don't know, conservative, that these issues wouldn't be more politically conservative, I should say. These issues wouldn't be in the forefront of our people's minds. And this was like 10, 12 years ago. And we had one of my members came to me and said, yeah, my nephew thought that they were born with both I forget what the term was, where you have both the body parts on both sides. So
Mm-hmm.
now what do you say about that, Pastor? And so in Christian Life Resources, I think I looked at your webpage for information about that and getting me started on how to address someone who is actually born, not someone who thinks they're a different gender, but actually was born with both of those parts.
Yeah, and that is the kind of thing that we want to be there to help people with, because it is an important distinction. People who are biologically intersex, who have some outward characteristics of both, male and female, dealing with people like that is a much, the questions there are much different from those that are just somebody who's 14 years old and suddenly decides, no, I don't think that I'm a boy, I think I'm a girl, or vice versa. Very different issues, and therefore as Christians we have to respond to it in very different ways.
So could you, I know just brought it up, so now we have to finish it. So how would you address someone who says, hey, my child was born with an intersex? Is that the term? I thought it was some hyper something, whatever, but
well, there are a number of different terms that are used, and there is something of a spectrum of conditions, with this. Having it biologically intersex is, I think, the way that they're kind of coming down now, is this is going to be the way to refer to it. But that you used to use the term there, sometimes transsexual.
okay.
And that was supposed to be reserved for the ones where it was actual, there was something physically, biologically in that case, as opposed to somebody who was just trying to, act or dress, or, as the opposite sex.
So if someone is born with an intersex, is that usually where it's predominantly one gender or the other, or is it truly right down the middle?
It's really hard to say, and it's going to vary a lot, and that's why there's a lot of trouble with it. The Sometimes, yes, it is very obvious. Okay, this child is 80% male and 20% female, just in terms of the prevailing characteristics. Part of the difficulty, of course, is the things that you would look at to determine this are things that are not usually exposed.
Mm.
You meet somebody, you're not going to be able to tell. So what it gets down to then is, particularly as the child grows, is what's going on with the hormones. Are they, developing as a male or developing more as a female? And that's not always something that can be predicted when you've got an infant in your arms and the doctors are saying, you've got to try to decide right now, how are you going to raise this child? Raise it to be a male or raise it to be a female? Um, and those are not easy questions. And as Christians, we have to recognize that when that happens, it's not something where we can just say, well, follow biology, because that doesn't actually answer the question for
Yeah.
you. And sometimes people get it wrong. In the sense that they choose something when the child's an infant, and by the time the child reaches puberty, the child really is thinking, no, I should be more the other. And then there are big questions about what to do about that.
Yeah, sin is nasty, isn't it? It's taking something that God has designed to be so simple and straightforward and has now corrupted it. If we're born with a propensity for one addiction or another, here we are born with even uh, um, the uh, the body that God has created us, that God has created, is now twisted as well. That it's now
Mm-hmm.
become a struggle for individuals on either side of what their parents raised them as biologically, and then also what they're struggling with internally with their hormones.
Yeah. And part of the thing that makes it so difficult and complicated is that it's dealing with sex, which is a big part of a person's identity. Um, you know, there are plenty of other genetic conditions or genetic predispositions that a person could be born with that might not be visible or else would be very visible. I once worked with a girl who was born without a hand. She had the rest of her arm, but no hand. That was just something she learned to deal with, and she had to deal with it. But it wouldn't really go that much toward her sense of self. It would be something she had to deal with. Um, and also, people might sometimes when they meet her be a little taken aback. But if you're a decent-minded person, you're just going to adjust. Like, oh, I probably shouldn't pay too much attention to that. I should be, you know, considerate about this. Um, but when you, as an individual, meet somebody with one of these conditions or find out about it, again, because you've got these filters that you use in your daily life of, okay, people who are this look like that. It can mess with the normal way you interact with people and how you identify them. And again, that it becomes difficult, on both sides. And it's one of those things, again, Christians, we just need to think more about a lot of these things rather than just react.
That is an excellent point because it helps us to be more compassionate towards individuals who are struggling with these things. That we don't just say, "Well, it should be such a simple thing like biology. Whatever you're born with is the recognition of this is a soul that is struggling in a body that is uh, tainted with sin." Yeah.
Yeah. And that's in many respects, that's really what we as an organization want to emphasize when we're talking to Christians about whatever the issue might be, is to remember that we love because God loved us first. That our goal, whether we're talking about abortion or euthanasia or homosexuality or whatever it is, our goal is not to win points in an argument. We want to communicate soul to soul. We want to love people the same way that Christ loved them. And most of all, we want them to know Christ's love. And if we're dealing with people in a way that just puts up walls between us, that's no help. We want to be able to talk about these things or react to these things in such a way that there's still an opportunity at the end of the day to say, hey, I know this is difficult, but let me tell you about my Jesus. Uh, and there's this thing that I know you're feeling bad about. Well, there's forgiveness, and let me tell you about that. And that's really what we want. And that means that we have to deal with people with compassion. Now, certainly when we look at the Gospels, and there are plenty of examples of Jesus speaking harshly to people. But it was never the people who had problems that he was speaking harshly to. It was the people who refused to recognize that they had problems, the Pharisees and such.
Yeah, I on Twitter, I have followed this group called Libs of TikTok, where it is showing videos of individuals who are, transgender, LGBTQ, TQ, or however the how many syllables you want to put on the end of that. But it is still, some of those are not people who are struggling, that are just very much in your face. And for Christians to think that's every individual that I have faced that looks different or is playing around with two genders, you look at them and you say they have a beard and then they're wearing a necklace or something, or they're wearing lipstick and mixing their genders in how they appear, that you think that all of them that you see are like that video that you watch of someone who's very strong about their opinions. They may actually be someone who is internally struggling with who are they. And like I like how you said, let's remind them who they are in Christ, and let's have the conversation start there rather than very abrasive, like you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and so many things. If you just think about that yourself, that if you get into a conversation and somebody's trying to convince you that you're wrong, and that's all that they start with is just you're wrong and here's why, you're not going to listen much to what they have to say after that. Your defenses go up. And yet we seem to think that when we have discussions about super important things with other people, that sometimes we have to just start swinging, to help them understand exactly how wrong they are and how right we are, and that's why they should listen. Well, human nature, generally speaking, doesn't respond well to that. Now, certainly there are going to be some instances where, you have to be that way, but those are few and far between.
Yeah, and a lot fewer than what we like, because it's much easier to be like the pundit of and blast than to be someone who is filled with compassion and say, how can I help you? What situation's going on in your life that I can connect with you in some way, and then let's bring that to Jesus. Here in Wisconsin, we have a Supreme Court election that's coming up. We had the primary recently, and but there is a Supreme Court election coming up. Why is that why is that upcoming election an important one for pro-life voters?
Well, after the Dobbs decision by the Supreme Court last summer, which undid the Roe v. Wade decision, abortion regulation or decision not to regulate abortion, it all went back to the individual states. And in some states, that meant that there was almost complete ban on abortion, or at least some heavy restrictions on it. But in other states, it just meant that they were happy with abortion and they were going to allow it. And in some cases, they're going to go even further than the Roe decision had gone. Wisconsin has a law on the books from the 19th century that basically bans abortion. And after the Dobbs decision, that was the thing that it bounced back to, so to speak, that was the law of the land in the state of Wisconsin. Well, the reason this is mattering for the Supreme Court is that legal challenges have been filed, and probably more will be filed, that are basically saying we can't have we can't say that law still applies because Roe v. Wade changed everything, and the law of the land was accepting of abortion. So that's actually what the default position in Wisconsin ought to be. And at least one of the one of the more liberal-minded candidate who is going to be on the ballot in April um, almost came right out and said, I am pro-abortion, and I will make sure that any decision that comes before us, the Supreme Court goes that way. And the balance on the Wisconsin Supreme Court is narrow. And if the liberal-leaning progressive gets elected, then that's probably the direction the court is going to go. If the more conservative pro-life guy gets elected, then hopefully that can be held off.
Thank you, because I think a lot of our people, if it's not on their radar, if it's not talked about in their churches, would be like, why would I want to be voting for a Supreme Court justice? Isn't this a governor issue, or isn't this a legislature issue? So it's good for our people to know here in Wisconsin that this is an issue that is going to, like, if I understand you correctly, is going to be resolved in the states, in the court system.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us would say it shouldn't be an issue that's getting resolved in the courts, but unfortunately, the way our system has devolved over the years, that's likely where the decision is going to be made. And it's tricky because these elections, we just had the primary the other week, and there were hardly any offices, to vote for there. So it's very easy for people to say, "Yeah, I'm not going to vote. I'll save it for the big November election. That's the one that I'll participate in." But these things, yeah, who cares about these things? And the April ballot is probably going to be very similar. Busy people saying, I don't really need to bother with that. Well, the problem with that is the people who are really, really motivated to go to the polls are, generally speaking, the ones who want things that we don't want. And, it's you could probably come up with some conspiracy theories about why these elections are scheduled when they are and as they are. But it's just something we remember that, if it is an important issue, go and vote. Don't count on somebody else to do it, because the people who are opposed to what we're opposed to are probably more motivated than you are.
Yeah, it does seem to go, like, voters seem to go in cycles, don't they? It doesn't matter which side of the political aisle you are. That sometimes they vote their guy in, and then the next election they said, well, he's doing it, or he or she is doing a good job, so we don't need to vote again, and then it ebbs and flows like that. So it's good for our people to know about. It's in April, you said, right, with the Supreme Court. Yeah. So as we're talking about Roe v. Wade being reversed, has the number of abortions since Roe v. Wade was reversed, has that gone down? Is there any way that we can tell how many abortions have happened? Is that the normal number, or?
I am not aware that there have been good figures yet, because, of course, that came down just June of last year, so that would only be half a year of statistics. And in some states, it still took a while for everything to kick in. My gut level is that, yes, there have been fewer abortions total as a result of that, and we rejoice to know that. But it has not been the huge drop that we would want it to be. Part of that being because there are lots of states that have no restriction on abortion. It's business as usual for the abortionists. Part of it is because some of the states that do have restrictions, they're not total restrictions. I mean, it's like a 15-week ban, so anybody could still get an abortion before the 15 weeks, or something like that. And there are a few states where various court cases and things like that have basically frozen the restrictions, so it's just business as usual until that gets resolved. Just kind of illustrate the state of Texas back in, when was that? Summer, maybe it was September of 2021. They passed a rather unique, clever law restricting abortion. I won't go into the details of what made it clever, but basically it worked in that it effectively banned abortion beyond the point of heartbeat in the unborn child. So it was about 6-week abortion ban. And there was the statewide statistics for that were pretty incredible because suddenly no one in the state was getting an abortion, and it was good. But it also illustrated for us that it's very much a state by state thing, and then it also starts to matter what states are you located close to. Because if you're in, say, Dallas, Texas, and you would have considered an abortion, but now you can't get one, you may not have the resources or the desire to travel the hundreds of miles it would take you to get to a state where you could get an abortion. But if, say, I'm here in southeastern Wisconsin right now, somebody in the Milwaukee area who says, I'd really like to get an abortion, but I can't get one, they can drive just an hour or so south into the state of Illinois and they can get one there, which makes it really hard to determine what's actually happening with the abortion figures. And the real big complication to all this is the increase in chemical abortions. Basically, you get some drugs and you take them. It's a sequence of drugs, and it basically, aborts your child chemically. And why that complicates the numbers is because it's very hard to track that because it is not happening in a clinic where they report things. And it's, they are actively on the more pro-abortion side. They are actively trying to find ways for this just to be dispensed almost anonymously through the internet and through the mail and things like that, so that even in the states that have restrictions on abortion, women are probably still having chemical abortions. They're it's just not being regulated or reported in any way.
Back in 2019, there was a movie called Unplanned. Was that did she have a chemical abortion on there? Because I remember there was one controversial scene where she was bleeding out. Is that?
I believe that did include one.
Yeah. Okay. So that would, and thank you for that because that's not something because I'm really thankful that you're here and thankful hopefully that my members also listen to this because this is sometimes people think, well, I vote pro-life and then now my advocacy is over. That's where it ends. Where the movie Unplanned really opened my eyes to say, what am I actually? I say I'm pro-life as a pastor. How am I showing compassion to people, or how am I helping individuals who are thinking about having an abortion? I'm just sitting here thinking that my pro-life activity or advocacy is just in the voting booth, and that's it. It's a reminder to us. The movie was a reminder, and also your sermon last Sunday reminded us that our advocacy for life isn't just a November thing. It's an April thing. It's an everyday thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so many ways that we don't really appreciate that we can be pro-life and get that pro-life message out there that they don't really cost a whole lot, in terms of what it's going to take away from your reputation or your opportunities or whatever. But that many of us don't even do that. The things where we are very affirming of somebody who's getting pregnant. Just think about the situation that maybe somebody in your neighborhood, somebody in your extended family, young woman gets pregnant outside of marriage. Okay, our first reaction as Christians might very well be, that was awful. Shouldn't do that.
Should have waited till you got married.
Be so focused on the sin involved, and I'm not saying there's not sin involved, but being so focused on that we end up, not doing anything to affirm the beautiful gift of life that came as a result of this. There are all sorts of horrible stories of Christian parents who consider themselves pro-life, and their teenage daughter gets pregnant, and they just say, well, no, we're going to go ahead and she's going to get an abortion because they just can't conceive of, sorry, poor choice of words there.
Yes, it is.
Just, they can't think of this, as being something that they can handle, that their daughter can handle, that they can handle having a daughter who has a baby. And they just they won't affirm the life message because they're so focused on the other, the shame aspect of things. And that's just the kind of thing that we need to be aware of in our daily life and the way we normally think about things and respond to things. And you know, not everybody is, you know, suited for going onto Facebook and posting lots of pro-life memes. It's questionable how effective that's going to be anyway. Not everybody is going to be able to, knock on doors or, volunteer for some political campaign that involves, pro-life issues or something like that. But there's still an awful lot, in your daily conversations, that if the issue comes up, talk about it. Or for that matter, and this is one that I like to emphasize with, when I'm speaking to congregations, that you need to talk to your kids about these things. And you can't just assume that they get the message from, catechism class or Sunday school or listening to the pastor's sermons, because what's coming at them from their schools, from social media, from TV, from movies or whatever, is far outweighs what they're getting from the church. And so you've got to take these opportunities, if with your kids, with your grandkids. You're sitting around the table and something comes up on the news about abortion. Well, that's your opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah,
Talk
not
about
just in
this is
anger
why
terms. Yeah.
yeah, this is why we as Christians think this is so important. Talk about it. This is it is just such a shame that there are some people who think that it's okay for babies in the womb. Like Aunt Mary, who's pregnant right now. They think that it's okay to kill the baby in there. That's awful, isn't it? And we as Christians can't stand that. That's why we're working so hard, to try to convince people that not to do that. Just have those kinds of conversations with children and teenagers too. You can't just assume that you taught it once and it's going to stick. It's got to be something that you continue. And I've been talking for a long time there.
Yeah, no, I in that Unplanned movie in 2019, there was a family giving up time. They were going to house a lady that was a mom that was pregnant, so they're going to take her into her home. So this was a sacrifice that they made for life. And you mentioned before about how volunteering for or advocacy for pro-life issues is not something that takes a lot of time. We have in our area, we have the Bay Area Life Center that where individuals can volunteer. They hand out diapers to moms, so you would say this is a bridge that they can communicate that we think that children are important. We think that they're precious. We would like to help care for them, but then also want that care isn't just about their bodily needs, but their spiritual needs as well. Let us do Bible classes with you, and I did that for a time, and then I moved on to other things. But it's still a big part of my heart of helping and putting our, shall we say, put our living out our faith that God has called us to live in the vocations He has put us in. So here's an opportunity for people in our area to help moms to be more than just Christians who would say, I am pro-life on November, but pro-life every day. And here's one way that isn't that big of a sacrifice. Sometimes the Lord may give you an opportunity in front of you that is going to be one where you are going to be asked to sacrifice. And if the one who calls us to these things is the one who is faithful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, there are lots of opportunities to speak up and to help people and to uh, with our pregnancy centers. You mentioned the Bay Area Life Center. We've got them elsewhere in the U.S. Not everybody is going to be the one who's going to be the front line, but I will tell you that very few of the women who come into our centers are coming in thinking, well, I'm basically decided I'm getting an abortion. It's your job to talk me out of it. That's not the way it is anymore. They're coming in, generally speaking, they know they're keeping their baby. Our job is to make sure they understand that we'll give you all the support you need so that you never have to turn around and think, well, maybe I should get rid of it. We're there to support them and let them know that, hey, you need help, we'll give it to you because we're Christians, because we want to share Christ's love with you. And if you have any problems, if things get to the point where you're thinking that maybe abortion would be a better choice than what you're doing, talk to us. We'll make sure you don't feel the need to make that choice.
All right. Well, we are right at 45 minutes. Our podcasts are usually an hour or under. I know you have lots of things to do. A closing thought that you have for our listeners, and then I'll have my closing thought.
A closing thought. I find my mind is kind of closed right now. Sorry. I would just say that the issues that we deal with as Christian Life Resources tend to be hot button issues in society or hot button issues in a person's own life. Things that they're challenged with right now. That's why we call our podcast Life Challenges. And sometimes it's easy to feel very much alone in that, and you're not. Remember, first of all, Christ is with you. You belong to Him. He's looking after you. You're part of His family, but you're also part of the church family, and that's some message that we want to try to emphasize. You're not going through this alone, and we'll be there to help with information or whatever else it is that you might need. But that message, which we already talked about, remember compassion. The people, the events, the issues that are a challenge to you. Remember, well, how would Jesus be approaching this? If He were here, would He be getting angry? Would He be getting frustrated? Or would He be reaching out with love? Would He be having a quiet conversation instead of a shouting match? All these kinds of things. We just want to stop and think, okay, how am I going to be a Christian in the face of this challenge? And part of the reason that people are scrambling, or don't know what to do, is because we have been spoiled as Christians in our great country of the United States, for so long, of having most of the culture mostly in line with our Christian values. It wasn't too far out, and it didn't, cause too much trouble. And that's largely being lost. And people are, struggling because it's like, well, it used to be a different way, and that was comfortable for me, and now it's not that way, and I'm not comfortable anymore. That is more the norm for Christians throughout all of history than what we experienced, 40, 50 years ago or more. And we should appreciate that and be ready for the struggles, the suffering, the challenges, and the prayer and the work that's involved. Just recognizing that we may be on the outside more than the inside these days.
Yeah, we are returning to our default position, aren't we, of the church being on the outside, and our values are something that are generated within and from the Word and Sacrament, not from the culture that we're surrounded by. And so it's an encouragement for us to be equipped to face these hot button issues. I know in our area here on March 26th at St. Peter's in Mishicot, there's another Life Celebration Sunday where Pastor Bob Fleischman will be the presenter there. He's also going to be presenting at the Bible class afterwards. So it's an encouragement for those in the area, Lakeshore area here. If you missed it at Immanuel, here it's coming up at March 26th as we talk about real life living faith and this wonderful gift of life that God gives to us in Christ.